All right. Good morning, everyone. Interwebs, those of you watching live or in syndication, and certainly those of you listening to our podcast, welcome to another episode of How I Met Your Mortgage. This is actually the 28th episode of our third season, which seems kind of monumental after all this time that we're more than halfway through the year's broadcast, which is really cool. As always, I'm your host, Adam Smith. With me, almost as always, unless she and some of her colleagues are kicking me off the show completely, is Jen Weibauer. Good morning, Jen. And we've got a really cool guest for you guys this week. Chris Griffith. Chris is probably one of the most prolific people in the United States mortgage world. In fact, he kind of makes me look anonymous, which is unique because I'm a loud, obnoxious, boisterous. How can I get my name and face out there in a less than subtle manner? And Chris has done this really organically, which is really cool stuff. But Chris, we are really stoked to have you here, man. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on here. Known who you were for a while, even when I was out in the Denver market. Y'all certainly have a great operation. I've even caught a couple of these How I Met Your Mortgage kind of tidbits. I think y'all booked me for this like last September. Like y'all's booking was like,
Been a while.
Yeah,
right?
we're
I forgot about it like 4 times. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that.
I think we're probably about 10 or 12 months out on having guests
Yeah.
booked. It's just gotten a lot of demand. People are happy to do this kind of thing, help their fellow colleagues. These are pretty much all people that have an abundance mindset. They want to do what they can to put good data, good information, good tips, ideas, tactics, techniques out there. And we're very lucky that there are so many people in the mortgage and real estate and social media worlds that are willing to do that for people, because it always seemed to me that there are a lot that aren't, and there's certainly a lot of industries that aren't. So we've been very lucky to have the popularity that we do. But yeah, Chris, tell us about you. We know you lived here. We know you're in Texas. We know you're from Texas. We know you've got this badass home office that looks like one of the most incredible places to spend your time, especially the antlers on the shelves and the hats on the shelves. And oh, wait a minute, that kind of reminds me of my home office here. But tell us, how did you get your start? How did this all begin for you?
Oh, man. I got out of the military 2011, December 30th, something like that, 2011. When I got out of the military, my family, my mom and my stepfather had been in the mortgage business for a long time. My stepfather, prior to marrying my mom, I think they've been married for like 16 years or something like that now, 15, pretty good ways. Um, but they had a small mortgage brokerage out there in Denver, Nationwide Home Loans. Moved out there to basically became an LOA for him to learn the business, to start trying something new. I'd worked in some commercial real estate investing with them a little bit, and they'd seen my tenacity, and I'd done some other investing with them prior to. So they invited me out, got into it as an LOA, hated life, got into processing, hated life more. And then one day, basically, he decided that he was either going to fire me, and I had decided I was ready to quit. So instead, I became a loan officer, and it worked out a lot better. I was growing at a pretty tough trajectory. He knew that, and moved over, became a loan officer in the Colorado market from like 2000, mid 2012, something like that, till I left in 2018. We're still licensed out there, but just starting kind of, the ground level. How else do you start with zero experience, zero education? I didn't have pedigree or history in it. Sure, I had family in it, but it wasn't anything I did. Right. So got in and started kind of bumping around, learning. The very first loan I did and worked on like through and through was my own. And it was the worst. And my loans are always the worst. But
Okay.
they teach a lot, right?
Yeah,
Made a
no
ton of
question.
mistakes in the beginning, made a ton of mistakes, learned a lot of things. I've always had a kind of a hunger to get to the why of something. I have to understand it. If I can't understand it and someone that does can't explain it to me, then I don't believe it typically, or I have an oppositional stance with it, because I'm constantly trying to disprove those things, whether they're well-held personal beliefs or underwriting guidelines, right? And so it began a pursuit where we just did a lot of different things, kind of grew a team quietly, little by little. Um, The next thing I knew, it was like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It honestly feels like it. It felt like more of a, it went from like a job to a career to like a calling. Everything for me lined up perfectly around the instrument of debt or obligation, how it helps the individual. And for me, as a poor kid from right down the road over here, my dad was a framer. We grew up around housing. My dad was building houses that were 20,000 square foot, and we lived in 12, 1,300 square foot that was remodeled for basically my entire life, right? You never live in a done home if you work for a builder or a framer. But what I realized quickly was that housing and houses and real estate were a wealth building instrument. If you believe the data, if you believe the interrogations that I was doing as an originator, right? And I would try to break down and understand everything. And that led to the pursuit of, after we transitioned my family's business into a full retail, delegated, working to become a seller servicer, I'd been kind of learning and growing. And I saw a change coming in the industry, and I just didn't feel like it was the best place for a lot of different reasons for me to build in. Not faulting them at all, but I didn't want to be building something that I didn't believe in either, because that's a bad place for a person like me to be. Like, I get worthless and ugly. So left the family business a couple years ago now, a little over 2 years ago now, about 2.5 years ago. Started Debt Does Deals, created a logo with a buddy, a veteran buddy, one Sunday morning that I got beat up for about 2 years, which was fun. I don't really care usually about that stuff, but it was all new, and it was a different Debt Does Deals, right? Like, everyone's like, what's that name? And then I kind of go into it, but it was just all new. And it was a place where I could begin creating. And it was something where I wasn't constrained by history and what a whole lot of people told me it should look like, when I felt like everything was changing and becoming new. I went from, I think my best year as an originator, maybe 20, 22 million, a little higher, something like that, with some hard money or non-QM that we did. Um, all realtor referral. I didn't buy leads. I didn't do any of that. Belly to belly with agents for the, core training, right? You've heard of that, I'm sure.
Sure.
Right. Did that model. It worked. And then all of a sudden one day I'm like in Colorado, and my wife's, everything was slowing down. Come time of 2017, 18, you hit that weird spot where it slowed down 6, 12 months there. And the market was just changing, and we were getting ready to move back here. And so at that point, I literally 100% of my time, I stopped calling agents. I stopped going to meet agents. I stopped focusing on agents, because the ones that needed me would reach out to me, and the ones that didn't, I already knew. And I was good at getting around it, and I had friendships with them, but they don't need to hear from me every Monday or Tuesday. Like, come on, no one's got time for that nonsense. And I hated it. So I stopped doing it. And I poured 100% of my time into Facebook. I was on Facebook like 18 hours a day in groups, arguing, building a platform of content, and all of my arguments well held perfectly. And then they boot me out of the group for something stupid, and all my content was gone. Right. I've been trial by fire, and I started in all the veteran groups where veterans on Facebook are basically terrorists, right, with their comments. And it's brutal. It's a brutal proving ground. But I argued my thoughts. I argued my ideology. I argued the things that I believe, both from experiential things I'd seen from interrogating other people's circumstances to my own experiences, and then the data that correlates and backs it all up that's available publicly, right? And so I argued the mentality of using 100% VA loans specifically to create wealth in a way that wasn't like falsifying occupancy to buy your second quadplex or something stupid that you're probably going to lose, but rather just focusing on an owner-occupied residence and looking and trying to time 5 things: market, location, acquisition metrics, rehab opportunities, and sell or cash out potentialities. And if you can time those things, and they're not that difficult to time, you can create an incredible amount of wealth. And so that was our kind of story. And when I say incredible amount of wealth, people understand that it has to do with like where you started and where you are, kind of a thing, right? Like there's always a bigger fish, there's always more wealth. But when it comes from being a catalyst to go from nearly nothing to like more than almost anything you've ever had, it's almost always from a single family home, or maybe a bonus, an odd bonus, or military enlistment, or a death. So which one of those 4 sounds like something you want, right?
Only one. And I do think that there's something really interesting there, and I could see Jen peaked on it as well. We preach, for all of you salespeople out there, everybody in our audience, that in order to be successful in this, it's got to be treated as a career, not a job. This is a marathon, not a sprint. But Chris, you've taken it another level when you went from job to career to calling.
I did. Yeah, I did.
That's a big deal there. We haven't really tuned in on that, and I know that our audience hasn't heard us tune in on it, but that's a big deal. You've really got heart and soul into this thing, more than just logic and intelligence and so on and so forth.
Man, when I transitioned to Facebook, it was in a weird time in my life where my marriage was failing. It was failing. Wife was getting ready to file for divorce the second time. She'd already moved out. Right. And not to get too much into faith or religion, but it's significant for me in this show. Kind of, you're asking me, so I'm going to go there. But my faith, something that I grew up around, was nearly insignificant to me outside of what most people kind of, oh yeah, I believe in God kind of a thing, right? But my mortgage, on the other hand, God, zero down, crap credit, nearly no liquidity, all of those things. I was able to buy this opportunity with nothing, and it was performing perfectly. And I was abiding to payments and all of the obligations I'd committed to. But my faith in my marriage, I wasn't. You can't buy a marriage. You can't buy your faith. You can't even buy a house. Taxes, insurance, maintenance go on forever, and they always increase. There's not a currency that pays those things off. You'll always manage a cost for a great value in your life. And how you manage that cost and those obligations will determine how much value you get out of it. So to put my marriage or my faith in the same perspective of my house, I had this awesome house. I was camping in the yard complaining about the weather and the temperature. I don't think a person's values matter, or value that they have to give to something matter as much as their obligation. Currency, debt does deals, is my way of speaking to obligation as a currency. Money and debt itself, it's like, where do you want to split that up? Federal Reserve note. What's a note, Adam? It's a promise to repay. And I have a parallel that goes a little deeper in this. I can walk out to show you why I think it's a calling for me, but it's not. It's my way of showing a person, in my opinion, how they achieve the three biggest values in their life for me, right? In the beginning, like, oh, here, let me set up this.
Yeah, we want to know. We want you to go down this road. We wouldn't have asked.
I think most people are blind because they believe statements like money makes the world go around. After World War II, the global economies weren't tied together with money. They were tied together with debt, right?
That's true.
There's far more debt than there'll ever be of money ever again.
Also true. Yep.
Like our home, our marriage, or our faith, how much does your money really matter? I bought that house up there that I made all that money with zero down. Crap credit, didn't have much reserves at all at the time, right? Kind of the same with my marriage. I didn't have much to work with then, and certainly with my faith. And what I realized was this: in the beginning, God had the ultimate value, and he created it, the garden, right? Eden, a house. And he created another value, us, and he put us in the house. He said, guys, live in this house. You're going to love it, right? Just don't do this one thing because, like, that's bad. Don't do that. Humans were crappy creditors. They did that dumb thing, and God was like, eesh, guys, okay, I'm going to put you in this other house over here. There's a 10-step credit repair program I'm going to get you through, and it's going to be great. Only that went on for centuries, and we sucked as creditors so bad that, man, God totally wanted to undo us at some point, right? Then Jesus comes along. He's like, hey, Dad, look, you created a sick house and these awesome people that are crappy creditors. So how about this? I'll go down there. If they ask and they let me co-sign with them, let them take title to the house too. And then I'll make all the payments. If they're late on maintenance, taxes, insurance, Dad, I got the money. I'll make the payments, but let them take title to the house also if I co-sign with them. And God said, done. And at that point, he obligated himself to deliver a thing of value to a free individual who solely chose a thing of value and to obligate themselves to it imperfectly. I wasn't perfect when I married my wife. I certainly wasn't perfect when I started following God. And I certainly wasn't perfect with any house I've ever had too, when you consider the maintenance things and how all of that works out. But with big obligation, typically comes big value, right? And so that's the story of my life. It was why I named it Debt Does Deals. I wanted to have a chance to share, in my opinion, the things that make me who I am, in a way that wasn't hostile or harmful, and in a way that put it into three parallels in my life that, and I've still got the sticky notes over here in this drawer. It was a very peculiar time. I had like sticky notes all over my office, and I was trying to work out these things, these tenets with my faith and my marriage and all of these things to make sure it was sound. But ultimately, I think it is. I think Debt Does Deals is a story of obligation and how you can obligate yourself with very little to nothing to an incredible thing of value. You just have to know how to do it. You have to know how to plan for that obligation, plan for that debt. Because if you don't, you're going to get to the biggest value of your life. You're going to hold up a little money and someone's going to laugh. Money's not how you buy the biggest values in your life, in my opinion. It's how you obligate them and the debt that you use, whether it's your family, your mortgage, your marriage, your faith, a big commercial building, even commercial investors. You look at family offices, financial planners, those guys know more about debt than most mortgage loan originators. Do you know why? Because they sell financial obligations that are basically the same thing. They're just benefit obligations as far as cost obligations, even if there's a cost along the way. But there are terms. And all of these things are broken down. You have terms to abide by with your various obligations. And whether you default on showing up to something like this, right? It took a year for me to get on here. Had I told y'all last Friday when Jen reached out to me and she said, "Are you ready to go?" I'd been like, "Oh God, I forgot about it, guys. I can't do this." Well, the next time you wanted to extend something to me and I obligated myself to it, you might not trust me. You might think that I'm going to default on that. And so our obligations are very much similar in all aspects of our life. And Debt Does Deals was my way of, I don't know, how else do you say all that in short words? Debt does deals, like it does.
It does. And yeah, this is the most unique hybrid of debt and tangible obligation mixed with existential debt and obligation that I've ever heard tale of. The hybrid of this is fascinating to me, Chris, and obviously there's a whole lot about you that I don't know and we don't find in our internet research, and we don't get by watching you rant on Facebook, which I do love, by the way. The vetted VA videos, just I there was a time not too long ago where you were basically doing one every day, and that was like my entertainment on my drive to work. I'm going to let Chris scream through the entire speaker system in my car. It's awesome. So yeah, but how did you bridge the gap? I mean, tell us, how does the tangible debt does deals activity parlay into what you do in your personal life, parlay into your faith, parlay into your marriage? How have you bridged that gap? Because it's obviously working in both your business life and your personal life.
You have to be present.
Okay.
Look, whether I default on an obligation to come over to someone's house for dinner, whether I default on a relationship that's in my life that was meaning to be there for something, right? Whether I default on, like if my daughter comes in here and she says, "Hey, Dad, can I have some Fruity Pebbles?" I'm like, "Listen, go clean up your room and then I'll get you some Fruity Pebbles." She'd say, "Okay, done." My kids wield obligation currency like no others. They negotiate for everything, right? But if she comes back having done that, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm on this live right now, babe. You need to give me a few minutes." Who's really beholden to who when you use debt? Everyone says the borrower is slave to the lender. Get out of here. You're crazy. The borrower is slave to the lender. Pay attention to forbearance. Even before that, a borrower can sell, a borrower can refinance, a borrower can wrap the loan, a borrower can be late and catch up. And they can do that all over again. They can seek modification from the government. They can seek modification from the lender. They can have their principal, rate, term, all of those things changed and reduced. What does the lender get to do? When you understand debt, debt perfectly obligates a lender. My faith is valuable to me personally and to my marriage and to my house, because if I can and pursue these things, right, and they're all different, and it's not a perfect performance thing either, right, which that whole be late, catch up proves too, right? But it's about a long-term obligation and a long-term willingness. Borrower's ability to repay, good luck defining that term in the age where you can go forbearance and no, you can't ask me any questions. Why? Thank you. I'll just skip my payment for a few months. How do you determine willingness in that circumstance? Whether it's need or choice, it doesn't matter. It's still the same requirement that we have to determine willingness. So a long tenured willingness is always the thing that I advocate for any of the values that you're choosing in your life, whether it's your kids, your job, your faith, your marriage. Like my wife's always like, "Hey, how do you get all the flowers to grow so pretty?" Because you've seen some of my flowers.
Of
right?
course.
I've been kicked out of a flower group for getting too many comments on a flower. True story. And that's why I have zero. Like I got horribly drug out of a flower group for getting too many comments on a flower. And after that, I haven't felt anything since. So It was a great learning event for me. But really, here's the truth of the matter. What do? I water them. I pay attention to them. I pick the dead flowers off, right? And you water it. It's not hard to see when a plant needs water.
A little
Sometimes
bit
with
of
our
nurturing.
family or our business or other things, it's hard to recognize what it needs, right? But it's about being present enough. The same old adage with a farmer versus these massive corporations that farm, right? The best thing for the soil is a farmer's hands, the farmer's family's hands. Really, you need more time and presence of self to deliver those things. And it gets hard as you try to scale, but you have to obligate your time appropriately. And if you don't, you start to have problems and defaults all over the place. Some defaults you can come back from, and some defaults you can't. You default on your family. Well, you can bounce back from a work issue. You can bounce back from a bankruptcy. If your wife and kids all leave you, well, you can probably bounce back for that in terms, and there are plenty of good stories out there. But for me, when I was growing up, if you ask me from 5 to 8 to 12 to 13, whatever, I had these jobs I wanted to do and that I would think about. But when you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was always the same. I want to be a husband. I want to be a dad. That's what I want. All right. And so professionally, I think most of us run into a lot of trouble when our internal why isn't sound. When we don't know what we're doing other than chasing something, money or leads or real estate agents, right? Realtors. We just chase and we don't know what our purpose is. And so it's like elk hunting, right? You're just running all over the mountain. You're not out there early listening. You're not watching for trails. You're just all over the place trying to find something to shoot. And that's not the best way to go about it because you're probably running more off all around you. You're exhausting your supplies, your people, anyone that's with you. And so when it comes to our businesses professionally or our family lives personally or our faith even, you got a time block. I start my day every day, whether it's big or small, with some me stuff, some quiet time, some reading, some reflection, right? Revelation and response is a big rhythm in my life. Revelation, response, revelation, right? It's how I'm not being a knucklehead. But if I don't get that, I'm not the same me. I rant more. And I rant differently. That's the truth of the matter. I rant differently. Right. I don't rant with as much love at the tip of my tongue. I'm frustrated.
Yep.
I'm emotionally, it's the same frustrations. It's just how I approach and address the audience, right? From my very first video that everyone I was really angry one day. And I just gotten this brand new Whataburger t-shirt. And I just gotten kicked out of a group because when I called some people out for defining loan churning perfectly, they booted me over it. Like I was livid that day. And I was just tired of it. I was tired of, I think being meek is proper. I do. I think being humble is proper. And I think that none of us are ever proper all of the time. And so it's a balance. And that is a good point for a lot of the retail guys that were on the other side of that message. I'm great friends with them now still. Like we've followed up. We've had great relationships in some places, but I do regret it to at least a degree because I do think that it may have closed off a couple of hearts and minds that I'd like a chance to win. And I'm not done and I don't lose, but it made it more difficult. So had I been different in giving that message of my grievance, right? My industry grievance or whatever it was, had I had more quiet time that morning, maybe, I don't know, maybe it would have gone a little bit different, but at the end of the day, I try to put so much of myself out there that a person can understand my humanity. It's difficult when you're doing this online, guys, because you're like mortgage, real estate, kid, mortgage. Doesn't tell anybody about you. I post flowers, steaks, dogs, kids. I post my humanity. I humanize myself in the eyes of the terrorist, which is all of you, because here's the truth of the matter. There's a parts of my flavor that makes up who I am that you're going to hate. And if that's the only flavor you ever try, you're going to hate it, right? But if you get a chance maybe to try some different things or to consume it differently, to see it differently, there can be a bridge there. And for me, where we're at in America right now, regardless of where you sit on all things, like there's too much emotional divide. There's too much hate and angst. There's not enough care, compassion, regardless of where everyone sits right now. And it just creates a really divisive atmosphere. We've all seen it on social media. So I try to be a lightning rod for certain things, to reframe them even sometimes, or to shape them a little bit. But It's hard. It's hard, man. You can come back from a face-to-face gaff with somebody a lot quicker than you can a Facebook gaff. I'll tell
Oh,
you
true
that.
story. True story. So there are a couple of things that I really want our audience to key in on, because while the language, the verbiage, is very, very different than a lot of what we get from our guests, there's a lot of message here, guys, that is still the same. You heard Chris say how important his time blocking is. That he's blocking out that time first thing in the morning. I don't care what you're blocking out or how you're blocking out, as long as you're doing it, as long as you're constant and consistent about it. But it makes him a better person, a better performer, a better human if he is able to time block out for himself. And absolutely, that's something that you should be time blocking out. My workout every morning is on my calendar, blocked out. This weekend, taking out the trash is time blocked on my calendar. Saturday, I got an alarm ringing on my phone. It was the Saturday of the month that changed the damn furnace filter. Okay, so the time blocking is huge. And while the way Chris is putting that out there to you guys is certainly different, it's much more human. It's much less science as it is emotion. It's really important. Hang on, Chris, because the other piece that's by far more important is that this shit is authentic. You will never see Chris ever focusing any effort on the what he does versus the who he is. He puts who he is, the who you are, out there. 99% of it. We recommend 90-10. You got to make sure people know what you do. Chris doesn't care. He wants people to know who he is. He's attracting people that way. In fact, he even said it, not in so many words, but he's repelling people that he wouldn't want to have anything to do with anyway by being so authentic in who he is. Please, when it comes to your social media work, your video work, these kinds of things, take that to heart. Focus on who you are. It will pay dividends in every aspect of your life. Chris, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that was a great point. I took, during that whole year, that whole struggle with my wife during that phase, I got to a point I was so disgusted with myself. Like, I knew my nature. I didn't like it. Like, if the worst person on earth for me to ever run into would be a carbon copy me. It would be horrible. I guarantee you.
That's true for a lot of us.
But I took a whole year to say, look, you're not on the hook to fix anything this year. You really need to understand all of these things, triggers, whatever else. Give yourself a year to understand yourself. And during that year, that was when everything kind of started to change for me. All of you that have, I want y'all to do something. You want some more humanity. You want to deal with more consumers in a human, honest to heart way. I want you to take your call list this week. It's Monday. Whenever you hear this, take your call list, and I want you to get rid of every single professional partner off of your call list. And I want you to instead put every single family member on your call list, all of your family that you haven't spoken to in a while. I want you to put your grandma on your call list and your parents on your call list for a month. And you better be hitting them every week. Don't be sandbagging on me neither, because if you are, it's not going to benefit you anyways. You might as well fast forward through this part. But if you'll do those things, what I'll tell you is the best relationship phone-wise in almost the entire time I was gone, which was about 15 years with my grandma. The best time on the phone that we ever had was when I intentionally put her on my call list. I would have her on a VIP call list that I manage. And what I found that even was that every relationship that I have, if I could quantify and qualify when and how I should be reaching out to it, just to pour some love into it because I care genuinely, it changed me. And all of those things changed the business model and how I went about things. And I don't talk about what I do because the people that know, they'll come, and I'm working on all of that. I'm not the biggest, the best, the prettiest, like whatever. But why I'm doing it's different. And that part matters, I think. And I try to share that with people because whether you're buying your first home, your second home, or your 100th home, I believe it's your biggest financial opportunity in your life, and that you should be consuming options and understanding 2, 5, 10-year plans and how those fit into your other financial assets and all of these things around that. And I desperately just try to plead with people to get them interested enough in something so that they'll come to the table for a discussion, not a monologue, not the only way you can do something type of event, but it's about creating and fostering a relationship the way that I fostered my family and friend relationship, close ones that I hadn't maintain the way that I wanted to, because 4 years of business made me non-existent to almost even my family that is just on the other side of that door. Shaping and reshaping who I was by how my actions showed who I was the only way through for me, because I am a natural salesman. I can talk my way through, in, out of every situation. It was it's something that's kind of like, people that can do that at the end of the day, I guarantee you aren't happy with themselves all the time, because they have to guard their motivations so perfectly, their why so perfectly, or else they'll begin to molest things that they have no intent to. I want my daughters to grow up to be who they're going to be. And they had that personality long before I ever talked to them. I'm certain of that. My biggest fear would be to give them a part of myself or my reasoning that isn't sound, and I have never known it, as opposed to teaching them how to reason, showing them examples along the way, right? And so letting my actions speak louder than words is really all that is. But reshaping your call list and including your family on there, your friends, your past relationships that you haven't talked to, even if you just do it for a week, watch how that changes the way you speak to every single person you call the week after.
True story. When we're teaching the contact management segment of our coaching program, I include something somewhat anecdotal about my dotty old great aunt in Miami Beach. She's in my contact management system just like every client, every lead, every advocate, and every other family member. And she's never going to use me for a mortgage. I'm never going to coach her on lead generation. In fact, she's probably never going to get a mortgage, right? She lives in some high rise in Miami Beach. It's probably paid off. But every time I call, Adam, you're such a sweet boy. You're the only one who calls. She thinks I'm 8 years old still, I'm sure. You're always sweet. Your sister never calls. Your father never calls. You're such a good boy. And the conversations last about 2 minutes because, she doesn't have anything to fill me in on. Same with her sister, who has since passed at 106 or 107 years old. She had a good long life. She believed for, the last 30 years that we still paid for long distance. And I'd call, and Betty, it's Adam. And she'd say, oh, Adam, it's so good to hear from you. I hope everybody there is well. And then she'd hang up on me because she thinks I'm paying 10 cents a minute for the long distance or whatever it was. But yeah, Chris is absolutely right, guys. Your relationships should all be 100% authentic. They should all be you. You should approach every one of them in that same manner. And by incorporating the ones that are so personal, that are long-term, so on and so forth, it'll change your mindset on all of the others. There's no question.
You have to pursue them. Think back to your spouse or significant other, a person you've loved that you pursued, and you screwed up every freaking, oh my God. Yeah, you pursued with hope, head up, eyes open,
true
with
story.
A smile. Then you pursued the best you could the entire step of the way, just trying to be present, add value, not so much because you wanted. Like most of us get to there and it's like you can't help it kind of a thing. That's usually why I'm doing something, because I can't help it anymore. But that approach, and that may seem like a little bit of a gimmick, take your family and put them on a call list, but I guarantee you those that do that will recognize how it does, helping them to do the one thing that most every single person hearing from them wants them to do: build a relationship. Remember that they're married with 2 kids and their daughter's birthday is the exact same as yours. Like the little things. If you can't build a relationship, then don't expect the relationship to ever serve you either.
That's
like reciprocity is a
straight.
thing.
Yep.
Right. Especially with people that you don't have a very personal relationship with. You need to be present. You need to be often. Social media is huge for that. It's better than a CRM. I guarantee you, all of my clients, I could send them the same videos that I put out on Facebook that they all watch and comment on in droves to their email, and I'd get 0 open rates, or like 2%. I hate emails. So do they. So I make them a promise. Hey, follow me on Facebook and I won't send you emails. I promise. Right? They'll consume the parts of me when they're ready to, whether it's a hibiscus picture or a picture of my daughters with snakes, right? Or whatever it is. People will find the things that they want to find. And you just have to be patient enough to let them. Don't be setting the hook all the time on every phone call. I got to get a loan from every person. That's the biggest problem I think professionals make, is they're way too aggressive on getting value as opposed to providing obligation. So that's back to that debt does deals piece. Obligate yourself to things. And don't show up necessarily looking for anything other than to obligate yourself to help them get to a better place.
Wow. And Jen, yes, I see you. I know we're running over, and it is what it is. But this, you've got to admit, this has been a really unique conversation from
Oh,
a
for sure.
completely disconnected perspective that drives home the exact same points that we want all of our audience, all of our coaching clients, all of our colleagues, leads, advocates, and brethren to pick up from Chris. So, yeah, Chris, this has been... Let me put it this way. One of the reasons that we do this show is that we really want our audience to hear the things we have to say from another source, from another perspective. You've taken that to a whole new level today, brother. It has been absolutely amazing, at least for Jen and I, I'm sure. I'm hoping our audience is going to feel the same way, to be able to figure out how to entwine this intrinsic content with the sheer practicality of it, and how we're talking about the end result being the same. You will have personal rewards in your life. You will have financial rewards in your life, so on and so forth. It's just a very unique perspective about it. So thank you. This has been amazing.
My pleasure. Thanks, y'all, for having me on here.
Yeah,
For giving me a
thank
chance
you.
to share my kind of an oddball nature story to it all. But
you're an oddball, and we love it. And actually, there's so much more I wanted to talk about. Jen, can we get Chris back for another episode? Chris, sorry, that's going to be next year, brother.
yeah, no. Listen, next February.
It's going to
I've
be
got time.
May of next year. We're booking in May and June.
Did they re-up for season 4?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yes, we did. We got renewed for season 4. So thanks to Jen for that.
No, I absolutely would love the conversation. Always have, and the few that we've had, I think this is probably one of the longest now. So certainly appreciate it. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to share some of my story on your platform. A lot of people see these things and like, we're loan officers in the same market, right? Like, people are way too, like, I compete like I did in the Marine Corps. Like, if I'm competing against you, I'm just going to try to beat you, even if you've beat me for the last 10 years. Like, but we can still have a beer later and hang out and talk and discuss how we get better and where we're failing and what we're struggling in. Because just because I understand these things in a really good lane, as far as business systems, processes, and all of that garbage, like, we're all at different phases. And far too many people do not live out loud because they're insecure about one phase of their life. So lean on another phase. Maybe you're the best flower grower in your neighborhood. Post it. Like, prove it. Make some ladies kick you out of a flower group to prove it. And then post more. But whatever it is, focus on who you are and the things that make you unique. Don't be afraid to be an oddball. Like, fly your freak flag high. Y'all ever seen The Family Stone with Luke Wilson?
Sure.
Fly your freak flag high, and that way no one has to wonder.
True story. All right. Hey, Chris, if people want to discuss this further with you, if they need a loan in Texas, whatever the case may be, how do we reach you? What's the best way?
Yeah. I hate email. You can email me at Christopher@debtdoesdeals.com. You can find me on Facebook, Christopher Griffith. I'm holding about a 52-pound catfish that I noodled out of a 7-foot hole. Holler at me on my cell phone, 903-815-7537. If you need a mortgage, we can certainly help with that. But if you have questions about all of the other stuff I've talked about and how to take your life and begin to break it down so that you can understand who you are, your biggest values, and your biggest failings on how you've obligated or not obligated yourself in the past, holler at me about those. Because more than anything, and I think everyone that follows me knows this, I'm a helper, man. I would get beat when I was a kid for taking dad's chainsaw at 8 when a storm come through the neighborhood because an 8-year-old doesn't need a chainsaw, but I didn't care. I'm going to go help. I like helping people get to better